It's been a tough week, and you may have already noticed that this episode is not as long as most of the others, not by a long shot. And I had a guest lined up, and we were going to speak, and we were going to record this on Saturday morning, and then the decision about Roe v. Wade came out, and I got involved with our local Planned Parenthood, and we started planning events for this weekend. And so that all fell apart. Now, I'm really excited about the guest. Amy has a group called Proximity West Texas that is trying to build a more inclusive community, especially when it comes to trans youth. So she will get that interview. You will hear from her very soon. That'll come after the 4th of July. So it'll come in the next couple of weeks. We'll hear from her. Bethany wants to come back. I'm sure I'm going to have Kim Gonzalez on very soon to talk about the work she's been doing. So, by the way, this is Progressive West Texas, the show where we talk to community leaders who are trying to create positive change. And right now, it's hard to see how we're going to create that change. It's hard to see how we're going to be able to make things better, and I don't know, I'm usually a very hopeful, positive person. I work on campaigns in a district that that is Republican plus 12. So I have to have this eternal optimism to keep working on campaigns. I have to always be hopeful to do the work I'm doing. And right now that's hard. It's hard. It's hard to remain hopeful. It's hard to see how there is a path forward. And especially on my TikTok, I criticize Democratic leaders quite a bit, and they didn't disappoint this time. You know, Pelosi read a poem. Some dude did yoga. Like that's not what we need. We need leaders who will actually step up. We have so many people out there who are putting their lives and their safety at risk trying to help people who need reproductive care. And our political leaders are asking us for money. And that's really frustrating. So it's hard to find hope, but I still want to try. I'm going to try. In these next few minutes, I'm going to talk about a couple of things that did give me hope this weekend, and talk about what is happening here in Lubbock, because again, like Lubbock is known for being conservative. West Texas is seen as this, this silo of conservatism, and nothing's ever going to change, and we're not going to be able to make a difference. But as soon as Roe v. Wade came out, I started getting texts. I started getting messages. People were saying, "What are we going to do? What's going to happen?" And so by 4 p.m., there were people out protesting in Tim Cole Memorial Park, and we had, I think, if you count the people that came through, we probably had 30, maybe 40 people. That's pretty good in a town of our size, especially when you think about the college students aren't here, and we just had a few hours to put it together. And then on Saturday morning, I was talking to a group that I had worked with, and we had all worked together to plan the last Planned Parenthood rally that we had in June, end of May. Time means nothing anymore. I don't know when it was. But so we were talking, and a couple of them were saying, "Okay, what are we going to do? Let's do something." And so one of the members said, "Well, the community garden already has a day of service planned. Like, do we want to meet out there?" And I didn't know, when Kenneth said that, I didn't know if he meant like, "Hey, we should all meet and talk about what should happen next at the community garden." So like, I have a tendency to like just come up with ideas, and they get too big too quickly sometimes. And so I was immediately like, "Yeah, let's tell people to go work in the community garden. Like, let's come together, let's work together, let's serve our community together." And so we did, and we went out to the community garden. I was talking to the people that want to run it and work, and they were saying, besides the people that like work for the nonprofit that run this community garden, that they usually have 2, maybe 3 volunteers on their service day. and we probably had about 15, 20 people show up. And so we were able to work in the dirt next to each other and talk about how we were feeling about the decision, and talk about what our concerns were, and get to know each other. But because that's the other thing is like, the thing that's difficult about Lubbock is that there are literally tens of thousands of people who feel isolated, who think they're the only ones who are liberal, who are progressive. I was talking to a neighbor last night. I was went out on a walk after it got dark, and was walking down my alley, and one of my neighbors was out in her garage, and we talked for a little bit, and she was like, "I might be a little liberal." And I was like, "Oh, don't worry. Tell me about how you're liberal." And that so many people are that way, and we all feel so isolated, and there's so many of us out here. And so it was this moment to come together and get to know each other. And so then what we did after that is we went directly over to this park that was right across from the garden. Genesis St. Clair, who y'all are all met, she's our community educator. She came and spoke about the fact that Planned Parenthood isn't going anywhere, especially here in Lubbock. Planned Parenthood is going to stay here in Lubbock. And she talked about all the services that they were going to continue to offer. People asked questions, and she had to say, "I don't know. I don't know." So there wasn't a lot that she could say about the future, but what she could assure people on is that sexual health care is still going to be available, here in Lubbock. And then we had a lawyer speak, and she talked about the the repercussions. What's going to happen? She took questions about, what if we take somebody to New Mexico and help them get an abortion, and what if we pay for someone? And so she answered the best she could. And so that was really helpful. The local Universalist Unitarian Church is starting a sex education program. They're looking to train more people. So she got up to speak, and then Kim Gonzalez got up and said, "Hey, let's let me tell you what we can start doing, and how what Lubbock is doing, what the Democratic Party in Lubbock is doing." And so it was a really great event. We registered, I think, 2 voters. We got a couple of new precinct chairs. We met people from a different county, and we were able to pull them in and talk about how we can work together. And so while on a national level, like, things are scary right now, I think it's important to look at those local moments, and to find hope from them. And honestly, like, that wasn't the only good thing that happened in Lubbock this week. On Tuesday, we had our Democratic County meeting, and I'll tell you, when I ran Miguel Lavario's campaign in 2018, after I ran his campaign, I was not involved in the local Democratic Party, and I was a typical, like, professor, like, academic. Like, I was aware of it, and because I would, like, talk to my students about, politics and stuff, and try to expose them to ideas and beliefs that they weren't used to, I thought, "I'm doing enough. That is all I need to do. I deserve a cookie." And that's not, like, it's not enough. And so when I started running Miguel's campaign, I realized how much more involvement was needed. And so after his campaign, I wanted to keep going. I wanted to keep working on this, and I even created a pack that was called We Are West Texas. And the point was to help organize all of West Texas. There's 27 counties in our congressional district. It might be 26 now after redistricting. I haven't counted specifically, but I was working with 27 counties, and it didn't seem like hardly anybody knew each other. There's Scurry County knows Howard County because they're right next to each other. People in Sweetwater know people in Abilene because they're right next to each other. Lubbock might know people. No, I'm not even going to say that. People in Lubbock don't know anyone outside the city. It's just the way our area functions. It's not any individual's like faults. And so I started this group to help organize all these counties so that we could come together, we could learn about one another, that we could start developing leaders that weren't just from Lubbock, that weren't just from Abilene, that were from these other areas. There's an incredible county chair in Bailey County who lives in Muleshoe, Texas. There's an incredible leader in Brownfield, Geronimo Gonzalez. He'll probably be on the show as well at some point in the future. And so I wanted to organize that and do all that. And so I started by going to the Lubbock County Democratic meetings. And after going to one meeting and like one just the petty infighting that was happening, the rejection of anybody new, like they were not okay that I was there. And not only that, but then I they kept making these big claims about the campaign that I had just run. And I knew very few people in this room. And there were specifically a few old guys that were taking a lot of credit for it. And like, well, when the campaign did, and I was like, I don't know who you are. I was the campaign manager. What are you talking about? And so I fled. I was like, you know what? I will work with candidates, I'll work with leaders. I'm not even going to try to deal with that. And so I was a coward and and I ran off. And so about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, Kim Gonzalez, who you've heard from before, she volunteers with Jane's Due Process, and she was on the show about a month ago. I think she was like one of the third guests, or on the third show. She did the same thing and was not afraid and did not run off like I did. And she decided like she was going to get people more involved. And so over the last year, she has been able to recruit. Uh, I don't even know how many precinct chairs. Right now, we have 48 precinct chairs in Lubbock County. That is a record. We have never had 48 Democratic precinct chairs ever. Like as far as I know, like maybe if you go back to like the 60s or the 50s, but it has been a long time since we have ever had that many precinct chairs. And so she recruited all them. She worked hard organizing. Like she is an organizer. She worked really hard doing that, and we were able to elect an all female executive board. And so our county chair, our vice chair, our secretary, our historian, our parliamentarian, and our treasurer are all women leading our county. And I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited about that. I mean, because one, they're just going to work really hard. Like I know, I know everybody that was elected, and really, I supported them, and they're going to work a lot harder than the people that have had those offices. Because what happens in our area, what happens, I think, in a lot of rural areas, because we do tend to move a little bit slower. Sometimes it can drive me nuts. But that people decide that showing up to the meeting, that's it. That's all you need to do. That's I all as long as I know how much money is in the account, like that's it. I don't need to do any more. And there's so much more work to go into all this. And there was just a sense of that they were lackadaisical. They were content. They had their position, so they didn't really care, what else happened. They thought that that was enough. But if you're going to take that type of position, that type of position, there's so much more you got to do. Like we haven't had precinct trainings in years, like precinct chair trainings. I mean, I say that Kim did one a few months ago. She had no official leadership position, in the county party at the time, but nobody else was doing it, and so she did it. And that's one of the things that is so great about the work that Kim does. She leads by example. Like she is not going to ask anybody to do something that she is not willing to do, and probably hasn't been, something that she hasn't been doing for a while. And so yeah, so we had this new leadership, and we have all these new precinct chairs, and and there is all this excitement, and we had multiple events, and we had a pride event out in Wolfforth. And so if you don't know our area, so like Wolfforth, so here's Lubbock, and Wolfforth is, if we were in Dallas, we'd call it a suburb. Like Wolfforth does not want to be called a suburb, but it's the closest little town. Like, we have Shallowater and New Deal and Slayton, but there's space in between. You got some farmland in between. Like Wolfforth's just right next to Lubbock, but it's still a small town. It's still, and there is this really great coffee shop called Tumbleweed and Sage. If you don't live in Lubbock, still go follow their Facebook, because they are very vocal about their support of the queer community, and they've gotten some negative pushback from that. And so right now, the community, the supportive community, has been able to really help them. But yeah, go follow them on Facebook, and that would be, they would love that. But they had an incredible pride event with some drag queens out there, and story time and art and vendors, and it was just really supportive and beautiful. We had the few little hateful religious protesters, who honestly, like, growing up around growing up in this area, arguing with evangelicals every day on TikTok. Like, I know how little they understand about the Bible. Like, I grew up Church of Christ, very, very Church of Christ. Studied the Bible hard. And so because of that, I've always been a little bit arrogant about my knowledge. I'm like, yeah, like, a Methodist isn't going to know what I know. So I've always had that, but not going to Bible Bowl every year, I've lost some of that knowledge. And yet, talking to these protesters, my mind was blown. They know nothing about the religion they claim to follow. They know nothing about the person whose name they claim. And one thing that happens on TikTok a lot is you see the no true Scotsman fallacy, that people say they're not a real evangelical, because. And so it's like, well, you can't blame me because that person's acting like this, because they're not actually really a Christian. They're not actually really an evangelical. And like that's not a strong argument. At the same time, if you ever met a Catholic who didn't know who the Pope was, you might be like, "Are you really a Catholic?" And that is definitely the vibe these people had. Like, they knew nothing. They knew nothing about the teachings of Jesus. Like, that was my strategy. I usually don't engage with protesters like that, but that was my strategy. Because I was like, we're going to keep it about Jesus. So when they go to Leviticus, I'm going to tell them to quote me Jesus. When they go to Romans, I'm going to tell them to quote me Jesus. Not only could they not quote me anything, or if they tried, they would say, they would misquote it. And nowhere does Jesus say, accept me into your heart. There is a parable about knocking on the door and being let in, but that is not, like, never. He doesn't ever say that. He doesn't ever say to worship him. One of the women kept telling me, like, Jesus tells us to worship him. I was just like, quote me the verse. Quote me the verse. We'll look it up. We'll confirm it. She was like, well, I read a book. I was like, that's not Jesus. You're not quoting me a verse. And I mean, it was just wild. Then I got real snooty with them. And so, in Acts, it talks about, like, the leaders tell their disciples that if they go into a city and the city rejects them, and that, they don't accept their teachings, that as they leave the city, to dust to knock the dust off their feet. And that was them saying, okay, I'm writing off this place. We don't need to try here again. We don't need to waste our time. And so at one point I was just like, I'm tired of talking to y'all, and I have plans. I need to go, meet a friend that I already had plans with. So I was kind of done. I was like, look, here's what I'm gonna do for you. And I made sure they were watching, and I knocked my feet against my legs, and they were like, what? And I kept kind of escalating it to let them get the hint. And they didn't know what I was talking about. Now if I went into a random church and was like, hitting my feet against my legs, I wouldn't expect people to be like, "Oh, I know what you're doing." But if someone is claiming that they're a pastor, which that's a really interesting thing that happens in Lubbock, is these protesters show up, they claim to be pastors, they will not tell you what church they go to, and basically they're lying. Like they're not. Like they might look at what pastor means in the New Testament and say, "Well, I think I'm that." But they're not really a pastor. And so there was one guy that was claiming, "Oh, I'm a pastor." And like he could not, like he had no idea what I was doing. And I thought they might even like try to guess and see. And they just looked at me and they were like, "Well, that doesn't matter." And I was just like, "No, this shows me. This shows me that you don't know what you're talking about. That everything you're saying is a creation in your own mind, that it has nothing to do, with the religion that you claim to follow." And so that was just a very interesting experience. But the other nice part about it, not only was there like a line to go into the coffee shop, there was a line to go take pictures with the queens, there was a line for kids to get into the story time. Like, not only was that great, but these fake pastors, there was like 6, 7 of them maybe, and just a whole lot more of the people supporting and loving and creating community. And one of my other things that I really appreciated about them is the people out there that were, making sure that the kids coming into this event weren't harassed, that they didn't have to see these hateful posters that these people had. A lot of those people were from the Democratic County Party, and that hasn't happened a lot because, again, like they go to the county meetings, and that's about it. And so the Democratic County Party is getting out in the community. Pride has been very active in the community for a long time, and people are starting to realize, like, okay, we have to start working together. We need to start building community. Right now, I'm talking to 2 tech students who are wanting to plan something in July. One of them reached out to me on Instagram Friday, and we started talking Friday evening, and she was saying, what's going to happen, like there's a bands off our bodies rally, and what's going to happen with that. And I was like, well, I heard a few people talk about it, but I don't think anybody's taking the lead. She was like, okay, tell me when someone does. And I was like, or what if you take the lead on this one? Because I was like, honestly, like planning these events is just a lot of decision making. It's just like, this is when we're going to do it, this is where we're going to do it, this is what time, and then you get people on board to like show up and get what you need. And I was like, look, I'll introduce you to the people you need to be introduced to. I'll answer any questions you have, but like you should take the lead. And she did. Lacey stepped up, and she is a 21-year-old tech student, and she's going to work to plan our next event. I was able to connect her with another college student who was like, I want to do a house show and raise money for our local Planned Parenthood. And I was like, you need to talk to Lacey, and y'all can work together and tell me what you need. So I think it's important to find those moments of happiness, to find those moments of joy, and to let those moments give you hope. Because, man, there's not a lot of hope on the national scene. But I think for a lot of us, if we look locally, we can find that hope, and I think it can be a very powerful tool. I didn't think I was going to rant for this long. If you are still watching, I really appreciate it. I think I had a lot I needed to say, and I think I need to get that off my chest. And sometimes 1-minute TikToks just aren't enough time to say everything I need to say. So thank you for watching. We will be back after July 4th, so we're going to take a break. But we'll be back in July, and we're going to hear from some really great leaders. So I'll see you then.